This little light of mine, you know the words. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Okay, so I'm in Atlanta, we do the stanky leg version. Well, thank you so much for having me. We're going to talk about purpose today. And I believe that purpose is largely about your light and what I call your incredible factor. And the question that I have for you to pose to yourself today is, are you shining as bright as you could be and should be and as you were born to be? You know, I love business, but what I love more than business is this concept of purpose and understanding how magnificent and necessary we are. And in the business world, sometimes we don't talk about destiny and purpose and fulfilling our life mission, but why are we in business to begin with? And so I believe that purpose is the most powerful force on the planet. And we're created on purpose, with purpose, from a place of purpose, for the very purpose of purpose. That's a lot of purpose. We're created on purpose, with purpose, from a place of purpose, for the very purpose of purpose. But here's the problem with that. Most people on the planet don't know their purpose. And a lot of us are afraid to admit that. Actually, I wrote this book called Believe Bigger, Discover the Path to Your Life Purpose, because I'm so passionate about it. And I start out actually in the opening pre-chapter called Confessions. And it opens up saying, I don't know my purpose. 5 words that most of us as women are afraid, even embarrassed, to say aloud. We talk around purpose. We encourage others to enter it, but so many of us don't truly, confidently know it for ourselves. But that's okay. You're not alone. The majority of women on the planet, and men, don't know their purpose either. It's not popular to confess that you know you have a greater calling, but you don't know what it is. Well, purpose is not supposed to be an ever-seeking, never-finding, elusive, impossible-to-grasp type of thing. It's designed that you know your purpose. You see, when we look at our lives, we see chaos. But when destiny looks at our lives, it sees a map. I'm going to share with you something that I've discovered called a purpose map today, and why I think it's essential for business owners to start playing by a new set of rules. Not just money as usual, not just influence and income and deal making as usual, but to soak ourselves in a sea of significance, because to me, I have found that it's greater than success. And actually, it is the soil upon which we want all of our success to grow out of anyway, or why else are we in business? And so here's this interesting thing. Purpose is this powerful force. It's an important thing. Do you agree with me? Yes, sir? Maybe I just need to go to another session. But if most of us don't know our purpose, but we're supposed to know it, why is that? And what is standing in the way? And how is it important to our desires to build a legacy, to build, have impact in the business world? Well, I think there's these two competing forces that are competing for what I call your voice. And I discovered that when a woman does not know her purpose, actually when a girl who becomes a woman who was once a girl does not know her purpose, a woman settles. What does she settle for? People pleasing? Protocol? Approval? And what I believe is the worst of all of them, appropriateness. Is anybody with me? Are y'all awake? Did I get too strong too soon? When a woman doesn't know her purpose, she settles. She settles for what other people think she should be. And I don't know if I'm the only one or the only woman in this room, but we've been shoulded on quite a bit. Now, you're going to hear me talk a lot about and use feminine language because this is the women's track. And I salute and honor all the men who decided to come into a room and get some wisdom, even if it has a little pink on it. But a woman settles because we've been shoulded on. And the shoulding is a byproduct of us being told who we should be, what we should do, what's appropriate for us to do, what's polite for us to do, what is ladylike to do. And all of those things kind of start forming and fashioning in our young minds. But it doesn't start once we step into our careers. It starts once we step into this world as very young girls. So I'm going to take you back to a time when I was 11 years old. I was growing up in Texas. Lived in a yellow brick house in a predominantly white neighborhood. We were the only black family on our street. And in the early 80s, for me, it felt a lot like segregation because most of the teachers had never had black children in their school. So I was at home one day. I have one brother, mom and dad, worked very hard, both worked for the government. My mom worked in the Social Security Administration, my dad for the FAA as an air traffic controller. They were first generation, really trailblazers in both of their fields in government. And so I'm sitting in the living room one night. It's like not quite night, it's not quite day, it's at that dusk kind of transitional time. And I'm staring out the blinds. Staring out the blinds because I'm 11 and I'm bored. And I remember seeing one of my neighbors, not a neighbor that I knew very well, but I knew where she lived. That was sexy. Thank you, dear. I didn't know her very well, but I knew where she lived. She lived just a little catty corner to my house. And well, I say my house, it wasn't my house. I wasn't paying the mortgage, but the house that I lived in. And she was about this tall, Caucasian woman, really long hair. I used to call her Pocahontas because her hair was that long. She had it in a ponytail. And one day she's just walking really fast with that ponytail flinging. And then she stops dead smack in front of our house. And I know that she can't see me, but that I can see her. Apparently, and this is what my parents had told me, we had this kind of tint on the windows. And also there were these blinds. Now you remember back in the 80s, there was like, the blinds were like metallic, like aluminum. Like you could wrap some chicken in it, right? And I felt like I was covered and not seen. Now, when you're a child, you don't feel like anyone sees you anyway. But I felt like I had an extra layer of protection, and I want you to remember that I was operating in what I considered blind faith. I could stare, I could watch what was going out in the world, but nobody really saw me. I was covered and hidden, and nobody cared anyway. So I'm just watching, thinking nobody sees me, and then she stops in front of the house, and so I'm staring at her thinking she can't see me. And then she does something that totally freaks me out and confuses me. She starts walking up our walkway, and then she proceeds to ring the doorbell. And I'm thinking, am I in trouble now for staring? I hear my dad in the back of the house yell, "I'll get it." So he comes and gets the door, and I'm thinking, if I am in trouble, I know nothing is going to go down in front of this woman because I'm a daddy's girl. So I tuck my head underneath his arm. He opens the door, and she explains that she's in a hurry because she needs a babysitter. And she wants to know if I could fill in for the job. And I thought she couldn't even see me. Did she even know that I lived on the street? And my dad looks down at me, and I look up at him, and he says, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I'll do it." So I throw on some tennis shoes, we're out the house. In just a couple of minutes, we walk over to her house, and she explains very quickly how to make sure that I don't allow her house to burn down and that her 2 kids don't end up in child protective care under my care. And so she's out, and I'll fast forward to about an hour, maybe 2 hours later. At 11 years old, you have no sense of time, so I don't know how long I was there. But when she came back home, she said, "How did everything go?" And I said, well, what I wanted to say was, you know you raise Bebe's kids. You know your kids never, ever need to have sugar ever again. But I was too polite for that. So I said everything was fine. And she said, well, I didn't have an opportunity to stop by the bank. And then she reaches in her pockets and she says, but I have just a little bit of money on me. I have a $1 bill and I have a $5 bill. Which would you like? And I looked at them and I found myself staring again. But this time not at someone else living their life. I was staring now at a choice. And I hadn't thought about what my compensation would be. I had never been hired for anything. Now, in my mind, I wanted to say both, right? In my mind, I wanted to say both, but something felt wrong about even thinking about asking for both. That it would be intrusive, it would be too much, I would be perceived as being greedy, not polite, not appropriate. And so I started to feel this uncomfortable, unsettling feeling in my gut, and I said, I can't do that. That wouldn't be nice. And so I said, I'll take the one. And mind you, in my mind, I'm thinking I probably had earned both. I mean, I filled in on short notice. I watched 2 kids that were rambunctious, that didn't know me, and put them to bed, and cleaned the living room. And so I probably had earned both, but I decided to take the one. So I said, I'll take the one. And then she pulled both of the bills back and said, are you sure? And I said, yes, ma'am, I'm sure. So she gave me the one. I put it in my pocket. She took the 5 and put it in hers. Teresa's upset about this. And I was actually pretty proud of myself that day because I earned something, right? I had been hired. I did a good job, and I earned something, but I also learned a very valuable lesson, and that is this. That is, if you allow yourself to settle for less, nobody is obligated to stop you. Look at your neighbor and say, that's good. Because it's so true. And when I think about it today, like why do we have that feeling where we feel awkward about asking for what we've already earned? Why do we feel awkward about asking for the raise? Why do we feel awkward when it comes time to negotiate money, to talk about a contract, or to not just accept what's given? Why do we have that unsettling feeling about reaching for more or even being seen? Why does it feel uncomfortable and unsettling to think about being what we've never seen? Where does that come from? Where does the tug towards less come from? And why is it the tug towards more kind of does drive-by experiences, but we're not swimming in it? Well, there's these 2 competing forces. It's not just a $1 bill or a $5 bill, but to me it's representative of these 2 voices I talk about in Believe Bigger called little me and future me. And little me has been operating in our lives for a very long time, operating in your life. You see, little me is the obnoxious little roommate in your head. Little me's been driving much of your life, more than we'd like to admit. But I believe that you cannot step into the ultimate mission of your life. You can't maximize your life. You can't maximize your company, your team, your vision, the very reason why you're here. You can't maximize who you are unless you dare to believe bigger. I just have this crazy belief that all things are possible. I have this crazy belief because I have 2 grandmothers that weren't able to go past elementary school for their education. Growing up, my mother's mother grew up in Louisiana, my father's mother in Georgia. Both of them cleaned homes and buildings for other people because those were the opportunities they had available to them. My great aunt Effie, who was like another grandmother to me, she raised other people's kids because that's the opportunities that Black women had in that generation. And just one generation before them, they had parents who were sharecroppers. And one generation before that, parents who were slaves. So how dare those of us who carry the legacy of those who didn't have the opportunities that we have today to truly live in an unlimited form and fashion, to build wealth, but also to be seen and to be heard and to be a voice. How dare we do less when we have so much more? Who said wow? Can I get an air fist bump? Air fist bump, thank you. So how dare we do less when we have so much more? But there's these two competing voices. And I believe that this is a season for business owners to show up in a completely different dimension. As visionaries, not just as income makers, product creators, service providers, but as visionaries. I believe that the people in this room hold the solutions to what's happening out there. What we see on television that is recycling itself. There's an absence of fresh voice. And I don't look at it as waiting on somebody else to be the voice that's missing. I look at it as me. If I'm quiet, how could I complain about somebody else who's actually using their voice, even if it's stupid? They're bold enough to speak, but why is it those who are the most brilliant, who have the resource, the intellectual capital and resource, in terms of ideas and innovation, why are we sometimes the most quiet? Why are we so proper? Why are we so protocoled? Why do we do things so much by the book? But I believe that if we would break in and actually decide to adopt somewhat of a disruptive and rebellious approach to business, that will bring forth innovation and vision and changes that's never been seen. Because that's where the new income is at. It's not in what's already been done and what's always been done. But you can't step into it unless you dare to believe. We've got 3 people you're going to catch on. If you dare to believe bigger. And so these two competing voices, little me is the voice of fear. And little me is the voice that says you're not good enough, you shouldn't do this, you can't do this is not how it's done, you shouldn't do it this way. This shoulding on. But there's an opposite voice. The opposite voice is future me. And future me is the part that says, why not you? Why not do it differently than everybody else in your industry does it? Why not step into something that you've never seen? Why look for what's already been seen? To believe bigger, in my opinion, believes to operate in the realm of the unseen. Because if you're a business owner, and I believe that entrepreneurship today is the new faith movement. Let that sink in. I believe it takes great faith to start a business. Hey, I'll just speak for myself. It took great faith to start a business, to grow a business, to expand a business, to leave a law firm with a very nice salary, to go out into the unknown world. But those of us who do that don't just get to do that one time. We should be doing that on a daily basis. The vision of being able to see what hasn't been done is what I have found creates, I consider it blessed income. Income that isn't just average money. Because there's a magnetic pull towards average in this world. The reason why that little voice comes is to pull us back to normal. What everybody is doing, what you should do, how you should do it, where you should do this, who you should be. And my challenge to you today is perhaps to consider silencing this little me voice. First, to recognize it, because you cannot fix what we will not face. And to give an opportunity for the real you to actually show up. Greater, bigger, brighter. Not just mundane or even predictable. Because the moment your life becomes predictable, the moment even your business becomes predictable is, to me, almost the beginning of the end of your joy. Yes? It is okay in this room if you want to be a little loud. I'm all right with it. It's the beginning of the end of what you really got into this for. And so often today we're looking at what everybody else has already done, but to believe big means to believe in the realm of what hasn't been done and then have the audacity to go after it. And what I found is that if we learn as business owners to speak in a visionary way, meaning speaking what we're seeking and speaking what has never been seen, that we invite those that we are selling or presenting opportunities to be able to rise up to a higher level, to step into this vision with us. And that's where we enter into what I call blessed money. where it's not just money. I've made money before, built a very successful company, sports agency, and loved it. But there's something different about success versus significance. Success can look really great, but I meet a lot of very successfully depressed people. Broken marriages, broken homes, not spending time with their kids, feeling that all they are is their business. But this other level of significance is about stepping into the life that you were fully designed to have, and I believe it's holistic. And so these two things, they battle, little me and future me. They battle because they know that you have this incredible light inside of you, this brilliance inside of you. And what they don't want you to know, well, what little me doesn't want you to know, but what future me is absolutely convinced us, is that there is a mission for your life. And I believe in bringing mission to your business, bringing mission to the marketplace, and also bringing mission to your position if you're in corporate America. Future me is not scared of little me, let me just say that. Future me swallows little me like a vitamin for breakfast and only gets stronger. Future me knows exactly how incredible you are. Future me is the voice that says, why not you? Yes, you. This is your time. This is the day. Future me is the one that says, put that proposal in. Future me is the one that says, add another comma and another zero. Future me is the one that says, you should be doing television too. You're just as good as the person that's on there adding commentary. Little me is the one that says, but that's not what you're supposed to do. That's not what you should do. You just need to keep your head down. So future me is the one that is trying to guide you into, I believe, the next version of you, the next level of you, the you that is actually going to make everything that you've been desiring in your personal life, in your professional life, your impact dreams, and also your legacy goals. It's going to make it all easier. But if we close the door on the future version that's calling us, then we close the door on the future that we actually desire by settling for average, safe, success, normal. Are you with me? Yes. So these two competing voices, they both also know that there is a mission with your name on it. And I call it the purpose map. The purpose map is 5 stages of stepping into your life mission. And I don't even know how to describe how important I think it is in this season for us to elevate to a different level of consciousness as business owners. Because especially for women, if we adopt the male style, what we've been taught is the male style of success in business, we're going to be sorely undersatisfied. And I don't think undersatisfied is a word, but I think it's a perfect explanation. One person agrees with me. Y'all are going to catch up. Am I too deep? Am I too deep? We're going to be unsatisfied because we're not designed to compete in the exact same way. I believe that we're nurturers. I believe that we have a different yet necessary approach to business that sometimes we haven't fully embraced because we've been shoulded our way out of it. And so this purpose map, I think, is important. It's something that I require all of my clients go through to understand what does the journey of your life look like, and then asking where does your business fit into this larger aspect of your master life mission. Because I think it's important that you put yourself on the priority list. We put everybody else first. Our family, our kids, our spouses, our neighbors, our community, even our clients. And then we don't actually think about, where do I fall on this? And I know because as Believe Bigger came out March the 13th, so it hasn't been 2 full months just yet, but it debuted for 7 weeks as the #1 new release in women in business in the country. Thank you, sister. Oh, it's so nice to see women supporting women. I say that because a book about purpose was the #1 new release in the country for women in business. Are you catching the merging of the two? We crave significance. Every woman desires a life soaked in significance, and she wants to be successful, wants to provide an income for her family and leave a legacy, and to rewrite the rules and to create perhaps what her mother and her grandmother and her ancestors didn't have the opportunity to create. That's my motivation. I want to be the employer. I want to be the person who enables others to create income for their families. But I also want to have a life that leaves an impact that is bigger than income. That's just me. And I have a feeling that I'm not alone. Is that correct? And so I'd like to share this purpose map with you. Is that okay? Is that okay? Yes. Yeah, I'm going to get, what was that? Atomic Dog? Sorors. I knew I wasn't alone. So the purpose map. The purpose map. The lawyer in me always writes a TM at the top. It's just in my veins. So the purpose map, there are 5 stages of stepping into your life mission. Most people on the planet will never make it out of stage 2. Most will never make it out of stage 2. So let's get into it. Stage 1 is called discovery. Discovery is where we learn the do's and don'ts of life. This is where we first meet little me. This is where we get shooted on. This is where we're like sponges and we absorb every single thing that we hear and who we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to navigate our lives. This is often where many of us were taught that we shouldn't be entrepreneurs, that we should get a good job with benefits and that blue check that comes every 2 weeks. Because that's what we were told, that's what was passed down to us as wisdom, not recognizing that maybe it was just limited information. Maybe it was just a byproduct of the time passed down to us to guide us. And some of the information that we got and the teachings are absolutely necessary. It got us here. But what I want to submit to you today is that some of what we learned in the discovery stage got us here, but it won't get us to our next level. So I'm going to draw here, it's kind of like a book. So that's a book. Isn't it pretty? So here we adopt what I call the rules. And this becomes our internal navigation system. Now, your rules are different than mine, and my rules are different than yours. But we each have our own set of rules about who we were told we should be. And in this stage, we ask this question. In each of the 5 stages, we ask a key question. In stage 1, we ask the question, who am I supposed to be? You remember as a kid, we're just absorbing all of this information. I'll take you back to my living room, my parents' living room at 11 years old, and thinking about why it was so difficult for me to even think about reaching for the higher dollar bill. Because I didn't think I should do that, because at school I was labeled a problem child. You're laughing now. I was not, my parents weren't usually laughing when I came home, having my name on the board. Do y'all remember you get your name on the board with the check and then multiple checks, and depending on which teacher would send you to the principal's office if it was 2 checks versus 3 checks. But I was labeled a problem child. And I remember when we showed up for school on the first day of school, for me it was first grade, and being told that we needed to be at the school down the street where the brown kids were. I remember watching the kids go into class, and none of the white kids had to show ID. My parents had to prove that we belonged there. And that was my first classroom experience before I even walked into the classroom. So I was labeled this problem child because I talked a lot, and I did. But I was also told that I needed special education, and that both my brother and I, he was a year younger than me, we were antisocial and needed to go to a school better suited for kids like us. I later went on to graduate from Georgetown Law, magna cum laude at Texas Christian University, $200,000 in scholarships. Graduated Georgetown 100% debt-free, didn't take out any loans, paid for it all through academic scholarships. This is my no loan dance. That's what that was. But the point is, labels are dangerous. It's not just dangerous that we give them to our kids or even that we spew them onto others. The most dangerous thing is when we absorb them and we believe them. And I actually believed that I was a bad kid. I believed that I was a problem child. So now maybe you'll understand why I didn't want to be a problem in asking for more. And I know that as an adult woman working with adult women to help them build multi-million-dollar companies, that I'm not the only one who struggled with this thing of feeling like I don't want to be a problem when it comes to money. We do what we're told, even in the household. Not my household. You'll see my husband walking around here. He's gonna get asked that question. He's been asked that question. You know, that's not really how God intended for this to work. So people will come up to him. So let me clarify. In general, oftentimes, though, we struggle with this, right? We struggle with what's our voice and what's our role, what's appropriate when it comes to money. And so we're challenged to believe bigger because of all of the rules, the navigating inside of us, telling us what's appropriate, what's polite, what's ladylike. And we get all of these messages from our church, from our parents, from the media, from society, from our teachers, from our peers of who we're supposed to be. And so all of this comes inside of us, telling us who we're supposed to be. That takes us into stage 2, which is called talent. And talent is where we ask the question, who did I decide to be? Who did I decide to be? Based off of who the rules told me I should be. Now here's the most amazing thing about how brilliant you really are. You can be anything that you decide. It doesn't mean it's who you were born to be. You should see in the back, they're like, oh, okay. I didn't know I was coming to MMSDC to get some church today. But talent is about who you decided to be based off of who your internal navigating rules told you should be and could be. And much of what we became was based off of who we were told we should never even try to be. So many of the decisions that we make in the youngest seasons of our life, when we know the least about how we're really designed, become permanent. But I don't believe we're called to retirement. I believe we're called to reinvention. So what happens in the talent stage is that we end up climbing one of 5 success mountains. And I call these in Believe Bigger the 5 success mountains for women. Marriage, motherhood, mending, making a difference, and money. Money represents also prestige and career. Now, individually or even collectively, these 5 mountains are not bad. They're all amazing and wonderful. But when they become your identity, when being wife is your sole identity, when being mom is your sole identity, what happens when the man leaves or the kids grow up? Who are you then? What happens when the job sends you a pink slip or your largest client leaves or your company just crumbles and fails? Who are you then? Who are you when you've served so much that now you're sick? Because we do that as women. We give and we give and we give and we give because our identity has become wrapped up in what we do. And these titles that we give ourselves can become idols. These labels, these inner stories that we tell ourselves about who we think we are supposed to be and who we believe that we are in terms of as if that's all we are these labels that become these inner fables. And so what will happen when we're in this talent stage is that sometimes we'll get to the top of a mountain, setting a goal that we thought we always wanted, and then we get to the top of that mountain and we ask, is this all there is? Because I thought this was who I was supposed to be. This is the goal that I set. This is the path that I set myself on. For me, I decided to climb the money, career, prestige mountain of law. I saw Claire Huxtable when I was a little girl on the Cosby Show. It was the first black woman attorney that I had ever seen. I didn't actually meet a real life black female attorney until I was 21 and had moved to DC for an internship, a legal internship. And so at 12, 13 years old, I decided I wanted to be like Claire Huxtable. And I made a decision about the path of my life at 12 years old. Thankfully, I had an image that gave me a positive aspiration to pursue after, which is why it is important that every person in this room does not operate with blind faith, just hoping maybe some will pick and see me behind the place that I'm hiding in. Because if we're not seen, then others can't be what they don't see. And us stepping into where we're supposed to be, as I'll show you as we move forward, is the way that the younger generation, but also other business owners, and you're going to have a greater impact when other people see you stepping into the fullness of who you are. It unlocks stuff in other people. Each of us. Am I the only one who is a byproduct of seeing somebody who was doing something greater than what I had done that gave me an aspiration to believe bigger, to go bigger? Well, I believe our lives are supposed to be the example, the manifestation of bigger belief and action, or else why are you in business? Why you show up each day? So for me, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer at 12, 13 years old, and I'm pursuing this path, and I go on to law school, and I go and compete on this show called The Apprentice. Have you heard of it? She's laughing already. She's like, his hair looks much better in person than it does on television. Get that out the way. I left law school a few weeks prior to graduation to go and tape that show. And we finished taping the day before my graduation. Actually, I got fired 2 days before. This is when I knew that 45 made a couple bad decisions. Let go of really great, bright, brilliant talent. But I did last 10 out of the 13 weeks. Make your neighbor say, she almost won the thing. So I come off The Apprentice. I get this idea the day after I get fired. I'm no longer living in Trump Towers on a set with all these lights in the suite and don't have a whole group of people around me. And I have a quiet moment to myself. And it was in that moment while I'm in this suite that I get this idea. And the idea for the first time was to work with professional athletes. Now, I've never had that desire before. When I was in law school, that wasn't a desire. I remember my fellow colleagues and classmates in law school fighting over the one sports law class that Georgetown offered. And I said, well, I'm not competing with you for that. I didn't have a desire. I wanted to be Attorney General of the United States or a juvenile court judge. And I was gonna give this corporate path a try. But I didn't have a desire to do sports. So all of a sudden, this lightning bolt moment comes in. I call it a lightning bolt moment. And so often, because of the rules, we won't make room for new things. And I get this idea to work with athletes, and I do something that the one person that I know, at least at that season of my life, that I can say something that doesn't make sense and someone's going to actually affirm it. I called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm going to work with professional athletes. I have no idea how this is going to happen. I didn't take any classes in school, and I actually haven't really graduated yet. But somehow this is going to happen. It didn't happen right away. I go and I start my job at my law firm, one of the biggest firms in the city of Atlanta. And I do that for about a year and a half. During that time, I also did some work with Atlanta Legal Aid, providing pro bono legal services on a fellowship. So my firm paid me my big salary while I was able to serve and work with those who couldn't afford legal services. And I learned in that moment, it wasn't that I didn't love law, it was that I didn't love the type of law that I was doing because it didn't have the level of significance that I desired. It was something, I remember the day that a woman came back to thank me for helping her to be able to stay in her apartment. Her slumlord was trying to evict her because her son had a disability. And he was considering her a nuisance. Well, you can't eject someone with an actual disability because of their disability. Violates the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so I was able to keep her and several others in her apartment, but it was so special one day when she came to my office with some fruit that she probably got at the corner store. It was a little white plastic bag with fruit inside of it and plastic silverware. And she's like, I don't have much to give you. She was from Ethiopia. I don't have much to give you, but I have this. And I couldn't take it because we couldn't take gifts. But I remember working on cases for MCI, WorldCom, and these huge, big companies. And while I was learning a lot, I didn't have the sense of gratitude and the warmth, the passion of that one moment where a woman wanted to pay me with a small bowl of fruit. And it unlocked something in me. And so I started getting this desire again to figure out how I was going to work with athletes. I started meeting a lot of professional athletes, and I tried to introduce them to my law firm. And they said I was too young, that I wasn't supposed to be networking in this way. Now, I had been on a national television show. I'd been a professional speaker. I'd been an entrepreneur. And I could see the path to becoming a partner was bringing in business. And here, these are blue chip NFL and NBA players. I'm thinking we can work with their intellectual property. We can do taxes for them, estate planning. There's all kinds of things that we could help them with, and even just franchising, helping them with when they're starting new businesses, but they couldn't see this vision. And so I decided to leap out and start my own agency called Edge 3M Sports and Entertainment. And I remember the day that when I gave my notice and I was having my exit interview and sitting across from one of the partners saying to me that she thought I was going to go work for somebody else's company, and tried her very best to talk me out of leaving, saying that I would waste my law degree and that I was about to ruin my career for leaving to go out on a faith walk to start my own thing, that they wouldn't allow me, which was their firm, right? And so often I meet a lot of those who are in corporate America seeking this transition and feeling this tension. And sometimes your ideas don't belong in the place that you're in. That's the tug. That's future me saying, step out. And I remember when I said I was going to start my own company, and she said, holy, the other word for poop. And she said, you're going to have to buy your own pens and paper. And I remember thinking, I don't want to be this person 40 years later, scared to leave, has been practicing law longer than I've been alive, but scared to leave the comfort of what's always been. So what happens over here in the discovery and talent stage is that we're in what I call the comfort zone. And most of society is designed around keeping us here. And even raises, success can keep us in our comfort zone. But there's a greater place for us to step into that we're supposed to be. So I leave and I start my own agency. Everything is going really great. I end up signing the highest paid defensive end in the NFL as my first client. He just signed a $62 million 7-year deal with the New Orleans Saints. As business owners, we know that a good client is the one that can afford to pay you. So then it just grows very quickly. So I'm representing NFL, NBA players, WNBA players, Major League Baseball players, and everything is going fantastic. I'm doing regular TV commentary for CNN, ESPN, Fox Business Channel. I have a book out at the time called Skirts in the Boardroom, and everything seems fantastic. It seems great. On top of that, I'm closing a lot of corporate clients for my athletes. So my first corporate client was Rolls-Royce, and then Tiffany and Company, and then Nike, and then Sprint, and then I started doing TV deals. Now I am this young lawyer that's too young to do this, remember? And all this happens within the first 2 years of me being in business. It's the fastest growing women-owned sports agency in less than a year. Thank you. So I take this leap, I listen to future me, and then I find love. I meet this man, and we get engaged, and I am head over heels excited about this new season of life. But what was really special was hearing the words mom for the first time, because he had 3 kids. So I was most excited about becoming a wife, but also a bonus mom to his 3 kids. And there was something that was more special and more sweet and more significant about hearing those words mom than The Apprentice and television and books and this company that is growing quickly. I built out this, spent a lot of money on building this office out. And I had decided to close down my business, to move to this other city from Atlanta to Chicago to get married. And I do that. I start transitioning my athlete clients to other representation. And it's Monday before our Saturday wedding. Now everything is set up. We've got guests coming in from around the world. It's a fairly high-profile wedding. And they have their airplane tickets. The venue is taken care of. We had a cake taste testing that Monday, in addition to a meeting with the host hotel. Lots of meetings. He's coming in town on a Monday morning for wedding week. And that Monday morning, I roll over, pick up my phone as I wake up, getting ready to go to the airport to pick him up, and I get a call from a woman. You already know this is about to go straight to hell. She dropped her... And she explains that she's been with my fiance and that he's been cheating on me. So this is Monday before a Saturday wedding, and I'm just getting up to go pick him up from the airport. Chapter 1 gets good really fast. And so I leave. I'll let you read to see how that all breaks down, but I get to the airport. Just because we're limited on time. But I was embarrassed and devastated. I thought, I'm too smart for this. I'm a Georgetown law grad. I'm a successful business owner. We're not even immediately going on our honeymoon because I have some stuff to do with CNN and Essence magazine. This kind of thing doesn't happen to a woman like me. And I remember being getting to the airport, looking at my fiance at baggage claim, just standing back in the cut, you know what that means? Watching just to see, so that I could see with my intuition eyes. I didn't need to know what he had to say because I actually called this woman, it gets really good, called her while I'm on my way to the airport. And I'm a very trusting person, but I was managing athletes and negotiating, and I considered myself a master BS detector being in that space. The athletes, 6'8" NFL tight ends, they all called me the general. Because you have to carry yourself a certain way in that space to be taken seriously, and especially with the level of growth. And then you've got these huge sports agents that are like, where's she come from? Out of nowhere, scooping up our clients. Why are so many going to her? So I was very defensive and protective, but I wasn't expecting to have to do that with my heart. And so once I discovered and saw that it was true before I even asked him a word, I called the wedding off. I told him, you're going to need to tell your friends and your family that this is not happening this week. Called my mom and my wedding planners, and somehow they stopped this train that was in motion. And a lot of people say it was very brave to call this wedding off. I believe that I had a grace bath the night before, just an encounter with God that really was preparing me not to lose my mind and to pick up the knives at the airport with Homeland Security around. And I think the brave part was choosing to heal. So what I learned is that when you mountain climb and you are addicted to success and achievement, as I didn't know I was, I talk and believe bigger about how every woman is an addict. The question is, what kind of addict are you? What we end up doing is we start mountain hopping. So when I went from my law firm to my sports agency, I was still just mountain hopping. So there was a greater place. I went through this period of trying to figure out, how did I end up here? And why did this, not just why did this happen to me, but why, was there something greater? I believed for a very long time that my life was not my own. These are arrows. And I was determined not to do this season of life again. I went through a period of depression and confusion and asking, Well, let's also just talk about I closed my business down, so now I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills, right? So I'm heartbroken and financially broke, and I feel in my inner spirit saying it's time to pause and rest, and I'm like, well, who's going to tell that to the mortgage company? And so when I was leaning up against the car that my ex-fiance had bought me, and now I don't know how I'm going to pay for, this was the day after the wedding was supposed to take place, I said this little prayer to God on the busiest street in Atlanta. All these people had still come into town because they had their tickets. And I said, God, how did I end up here, and why did this happen to me? And I heard a whisper that says, you're going to be able to change the lives of women like never before. And I thought, couldn't you have sent me a memo? And then I thought, I don't really like women, especially not working with them, because they can be evil. And I thought about a lot of the experiences I had at my law firm, and I talk about hazing in the workplace that happens, that we also do in the business world. How we size each other up, and how we look at each other, and how we tear each other down, and we go with the opposite of how our feminine essence is actually designed to co-mingle and co-integrate with each other. And so I didn't know what he meant, but I knew he meant it because he certainly had my attention. My whole life had blown up. And so sometimes what I call split rock moments comes into our lives to break us up with our comfort zone so that we would enter into this place called the gap. I believe this is where most of us are now, in this place of transition. We're not where we were, but we're not exactly where we're going. We're not in our Egypt, but we're not quite yet in our promised land. We're in this transitional wilderness place, somewhat going in circles, maybe feeling like you've tapped out in your business, like you are kind of going through the motions, but nothing new or fresh is really coming or happening. And I believe it's because you're still operating with an old vision trying to get into a new place. And that you're also not willing to let go of the rules of how you've always done it, because your comfort zone isn't where you're supposed to end up. There is a greater place, a greater space that operates with a higher frequency. I call it your glory zone. But the way that we get unstuck and out of the gap is we have to first unload. We have to ditch the rules. We have to ditch little me. We have to ditch how we've done it, and we also have to ditch the idols that have been our titles. The things that we say that we are, because it's become a prison limiting who we could actually be. Are you with me? Yes? And so we've got to be willing to unload. That's the only way that we'll move through the gap into what I call the shift. Now, a lot of people think they're in a shift, but they're really in the gap. You know you're in a shift if you're actually moving forward. Otherwise, we're just drunk on our own possibility, telling ourselves this is what's going to happen, but are we actually seeing it? I don't think it actually has to take a long time for things to happen the way that you desire when you're operating with your highest self. If we're actually believing bigger and then acting like what we just said we believed. Leaping, launching, trying, not playing things safe. So the way you know you're in a shift is you just take the F out. And when all this stuff starts happening around you, this is supposed to look like a little seedling. It's going to feel like a war zone, but it's really supposed to be a growth zone. It's supposed to stretch you. It's supposed to be uncomfortable, and growth is not pretty. It's not. Sometimes it's not flinging ugly. I was in counseling like 2 days a week at first because I knew my life was not my own, and I knew I had to be okay for others. I wasn't just going to get out there and start motivating people. I remember 2 weeks after, a little less than that, after I called my wedding off, ESPN and CNN both called for me to do specials and commentary on Tiger Woods cheating on his wife. So as women, we know how to suit up, right, and keep going and to cover up everything. But the health of your life is going to be a byproduct of the health of your heart. And that's going to be the same thing that holds true in your business. And so to step out of the gap, I had to make bigger decisions to take me into a bigger place. And I realized that there are other places that we're supposed to get to. Stage 4 of this purpose map is called gifts. And gifts is where we ask the question, who was I really designed and born to be? What are my real gifts? My gifts are different than my talents. My talents are what I've learned to do and what I've trained to do and what I decided to do. My gifts are what I was born to do. And the reason we can't look at purpose and ask the question of start with your why or start with your big passion is because there's many things you've learned to do well, but then there's other things you've never done that you do even better. So how can you be passionate about something that you've never yet experienced because you've been operating at a dimension that's limited as opposed to the unlimited? And so our ultimate superpower, and often our talents hide our gifts, but I believe that money making can be a gift, product creation, innovation can be a gift, communication can be a gift. The question is, what is your gift? And Believe Bigger, I walk you through the difference between your talents and your gifts. And I believe it's absolutely essential to go to a different level as a business owner, to start operating from the language and from the skill set of your gifts, not just your talents and not just what you've been trained to do, not just what you see everybody else doing. Because this gives you your unique value proposition in the marketplace. I know that we have a few more minutes before we take a break, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to actually talk about these 6 pillars of the new rules of leadership and influence. I'm going to talk specifically about branding and influence and making a difference and standing out in the marketplace at a different level. And these are the types of things that you need to groom your gifts with. And so I discovered this in this gift stage, that I had a gift around messaging and doing frameworks and income generation being an actual gift. Being a lawyer was a talent. I was good at it, but I was also miserable. At the same time, I was good at it because I trained to do it. So much of what we do is what we've been trained to do, not necessarily what we've been called to do. When we're operating in our gifts and understand that our ultimate gift, our shared gift in this room that we all have, is our individual voices. If you remember at the outset, I said that our voice is integral to understanding our purpose. That there's no need for us to hide and to just wait to be seen or to be selected, but there's something inside of you. I believe that each of us is a unique expression of an idea of God, that there's a voice inside of us that nobody else has. And when we bring that voice as the vision to our business, then we operate in a territory that nobody else can even begin to understand. Well, why is that happening for her business? Maybe she's a visionary who's not just recycling information, but speaking something new, operating in the realm of the unseen, sharing that at the meetings that she'll be having tomorrow with potential buyers. And when you operate in your gifts, using your voice, we step into this place called influence, which is the final stage. In influence, we ask the question, where am I now being led to lead next? Not if. I don't believe that some of us are designed for leadership. I believe it's all of us. I just have this idea and this thought that God's not a respecter of persons in that matter. And what would happen if we raised our kids to believe that one day they would be called to lead? That one day, that everything they learned in terms of how to navigate life, the skills that they learn in terms of how to climb mountains, to be good stewards of their abilities, to learn to be responsible, to be excellent in their craft, that would be just like a sharpshooter learns how to master the skill of shooting one day for battle, and then to master battle one day for teaching other people how they climbed, how they overcame, so that you can now lead other people to do the same. Are you following? Yes. That each of us has this shared calling of being a teacher, of also being a visionary, of being a voice, so that other people can see you and see your success, because it's important that you win. It's important that you win because someone else is going to need to see that they can do it too. And some of the obstacles that you face, the resistance, the challenges that you're inevitably going to face, it's not an attack, it's an alignment. It's an elevation, it's a recruitment for higher ground, because you matter, because your voice matters. And so as I went through this process, the first time I drew this map was for a woman actually at Home Depot. Not Michelle, though. And I drew this for her. She was trying to transition, not sure where she was at. Delta Airlines was one of my clients, and we were at a mixer for Delta Airlines. And I drew it on the back of a napkin. It was the first time I ever drew this map, and this was 7 years ago. And she says, I'm right here. I'm in the gap. And I realized in that moment that this next season of my life would be about leading people out of the gap and helping them to build their businesses by helping their customers and their clients to get out of the gap that they're in. And that's your job. That's your mission. And it was in that season of also trying to rebuild my life, not only spiritually and emotionally, but I also started investing in more business programs so that I could maybe gain even another new skill set. People kept asking me, how did I get athlete clients and corporate clients? And so I put together this event called Me University, the Ultimate Business and Branding Boot Camp in 2010. I had a client by the name of Brian Tippins at HP, and he was my first corporate client that invested in my company. And that next year, several others signed on and helped sponsor the next Me University. One is in the room, Teresa Harrison with Ernst & Young. And also Michelle. Tell Michelle that I thanked her publicly because you're here. I thought you walked out. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw your pretty face. I was actually hoping you wouldn't be here so I wouldn't tear up. In year 2, HP, Office Depot, Home Depot, and Ernst & Young were there. They didn't know that I was rebuilding, trying to find my confidence again. And I wanted to, be able to, I know now as an employer and as someone who assigns contracts for other people, that you don't always hear thank you. And this is, I believe, how women, we can do business differently. So I'd like to thank these 2 women for investing in this woman. Because it not only changed my life, but it's changed the lives of so many other women. Today I run the largest business coaching company for women of faith in this country. And going from not knowing how I was going to pay my bills to now doing multiple 7 figures, teaching about purpose and branding and income generation and profit, and that's what the next session is going to be about. And when we invest in another woman, we invest in brilliance, but we also invest in the type of nurturing that will nurture an idea to fruition and not just make it rush and compete its way out. And so it was through going through the gap, making bigger decisions, putting this idea, I had never thought about coaching or getting into this type of personal development space, but I cast this vision first for Brian Tippins at HP. Now he's the Chief Diversity Officer at HPE. I cast this vision out and I said, I want to help small businesses develop their capacity through branding. And they're like, that's a unique approach. We've never heard that before. And I found that through media and through strategic positioning yourself as an expert, that a small business is no excuse for a small mindset, but that we can operate at a higher level with lower resources, but have bigger impact. Because here I'm just this one woman in the beginning, and as I grew just by year 2, the level of sponsorship deals were the size that they would give for companies that have a 40,000 member base. This is how important it is to learn to speak visionary, to operate with significance and not just success. And I believe that is what is calling to you as well. The last thing that I want to say is that on the other side of a shift, of stepping into your gifts and your influence, is not just a larger company, which is a nice thing to have, and more income because it gives you choices and you can hire more people. But for me, I also, as I stepped into my purpose, I believe I met my purpose partner. And everyone likes the good, let me put this here, at good ending. And so I say this to women business owners all the time, because I was scared about growing my business. I thought, if I grow my business, am I going to stay single forever? Am I going to be intimidating? And I had to dump the rules and the stinking, shrinking thinking that I talk about in chapter 3 about living with what other people say as they think we should based off of their own wounds passed down as wisdom. And I'm so grateful to my husband now as a man who is very successful in his own right. You may have seen him this season as the celebrity counselor on Real Housewives. He's had his own TV show on the FYI channel. But he chose to choose me even as a boss lady who wasn't going to shrink and said, I want to step and be in that space as well. And I don't know who that's for as a woman. I know we don't talk about that usually at business conferences, but because I coach women and I know that this is one of the thoughts that goes through in our head and it's a women's session, I just decided to be really honest and transparent and put my heart out there so that you would know that I see you, not just as a successful, polished woman that you are, but I see the girl in you. And she matters too. And so thank you to my purpose partner. I just wanted to clarify, he's not the one who cheated on me. Someone walked up to him in Florida. We were at this women's brunch the other day, and she said, well, did you repent before you asked her to marry you? But look, last thing I'll say about why it's important that we're visible. 6 months after The Apprentice ended, they were re-airing replays of the season on CNBC. And there was a woman who was dying from cancer. And her mom asked if I would talk with her. And I said, sure, of course. I was working at Legal Aid at the time, Atlanta Legal Aid. And I got on the phone, I talked with her. Her name was Faith. She had 2 kids named Hope and Chance. And when I was talking with her, she was very weak, and at a certain point, I just asked her about her relationship with God, and I didn't know if that was appropriate or not, but it's what I felt inside of me, and she had seen me on this business show. And she says, I'm not sure. So I prayed with her, and I said, I know we can be sure, and then at the end, she had a very tender voice. She says, if I'd known it was that easy for me to grow and come into a closer relationship with God, I would have done it a long time ago. That night, I went home, and I got an email from her, and I went to call Faith the next morning, and she had passed away. And I realized then that business matters, but it's not just about the money. It's about us being seen, and we can have impact in ways that we don't even begin to understand. I had a woman in a workshop one time who stayed until the very end, and I didn't meet her until 6 months later, and she said, I was getting ready to commit suicide that day. But I came to your business and branding workshop that would have not started without women like Michelle and Teresa investing and giving me the confidence to maybe do this thing again. And she said, I decided not to by sitting there listening to you tell me that I mattered. And I started my own company. I have my own business, and she handed me her own book. And so it's important that we're seen, that we're visible, that we break up with success, that we step into significance, because the success there is so much sweeter. And I invite you, after we take a break, to come back, and I'd love to talk to you about what does it really take to build your brand and your business. And also, are there books out there? So we have a retailer that's local to Detroit, a woman-owned business. We want to send her back with no books, so I hope that you will get one for you, but also think about somebody else or your team or someone at your company as well, a client that you have even that you would like to give them a copy. This whole purpose map is broken down. I'll just define for you the difference between your talents and your gifts and help you lead very clearly with what your life mission is. And this is what I'm doing in this season, is teaching about this purpose map for business owners, but also for women's events around the world. And so, final parting words are this. One of my favorite quotes is that if you are not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. And we need you. God bless you. Thank you so much for having me.